There's a moment, just a split second, where your brain hasn't caught up yet, where something is already very wrong and you don't know it yet. For me, that moment was a Tuesday afternoon in November. I had $47,000 in a duffel bag sitting in my back seat, and my phone was ringing for the 14th time. I didn't answer. I should have. Actually, no, I shouldn't have, because the person on the other end wasn't calling to talk. Let me back up. Way up. My name is Marcus. I'm 26 years old. I work the night shift at a grocery distribution warehouse about 40 minutes outside the city. I drive the same route every single day. Highway 9, exit 14, left on Crescent, straight shot to the loading dock. I've done it so many times that I could drive it half asleep, and honestly, some mornings I have. Nothing exciting ever happens to me. I mean that literally. I am the most boring person I know. My idea of a wild weekend is finding a new brand of instant noodles at the dollar store. My coworkers joke that I'm basically furniture, just always there, never moving, never changing. I used to laugh at that. I don't anymore. It was a Monday when everything started. I had just finished a double shift, 16 hours of loading pallets, checking inventory, breathing in cold air and cardboard dust. I was exhausted in that specific way where your bones feel hollow. I clocked out around 6 in the morning, walked across the parking lot in the dark, and got into my car. I tossed my bag onto the back seat, turned the heat on, and sat there for a second just staring at nothing. That's something I do when I'm too tired to actually drive. Just sit, let the engine warm up, let my brain catch up to my body. And that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a bag, like a gym bag or a backpack someone had left in the lot and I had somehow kicked under my car by accident. But it wasn't under my car, it was inside it, sitting right there on the back seat next to my own back. Dark green canvas, military style, zipper halfway open. I turned around slowly, like it might move if I startled it. It didn't move, obviously, it was a bag. I reached back and grabbed the zipper and pulled it open all the way. And I just stopped breathing. Cash, bundled, rubber banded, stacked neat and tight like someone had packed it carefully and on purpose. Not crumpled gas station cash, not coins. Clean, organized, banded bills. I grabbed one bundle and looked at it. Hundreds. All hundreds. I looked around the parking lot. No one was there. The lot lights were still on, but the sky was starting to go gray. A couple of cars scattered around, all empty. The warehouse behind me, doors shut, shift over. I sat back in my seat and stared at the steering wheel for a good 30 seconds. I have no rational explanation for what I did next, except that I was exhausted and the human brain does strange things at 6 in the morning after 16 hours of physical labor. I put the bag on the passenger seat. I drove home. I told myself I would figure it out when I wasn't half dead. Here is the thing about finding money when you are broke, and I mean broke in the real way. Not I can't afford a vacation broke, but I'm 3 weeks behind in rent, and I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every day this month broke. When you find money in that state, your brain does something really dangerous. It starts explaining why it's yours. By the time I got home and counted it, I had worked myself into a full story. Someone must have left the bag in the lot, a drunk person maybe, or someone who put it down while loading something into another car and just forgot it. The bag wasn't locked, no name on it, no ID, no phone number, just cash. $47,200. I counted it 3 times. I sat on my kitchen floor with the cash spread out around me like some kind of insane dream, and I genuinely thought that this was the universe finally balancing things out. All those years of grinding, struggling, barely surviving, this was my turn. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet. I hid the money in the best place I could think of, which was a shoebox in the back of my closet behind my winter jackets. I know, not exactly a Swiss vault, but I was running on fumes and adrenaline, and I just needed it out of sight while I slept. I slept for 10 hours straight. When I woke up, I thought it had been a dream. I actually walked to the closet half expecting to find nothing but old sneakers, but the box was there and the money was real, and for about 2 hours that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope.
I made a list. Rent first, back rent, all of it. Then my car insurance, which I had let lapse 2 months ago and had been quietly panicking about ever since. Then groceries, actual groceries, the kind where you don't check the price of everything before it goes in the cart. I even wrote down new jacket because mine had a broken zipper and I'd been using a safety pin to hold it shut since October. I was sitting on my couch with that list in my hand, smiling like an idiot when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost answered it. My thumb was literally on the green button, but something made me pause. It was probably nothing. Spam call, robocall, someone trying to sell me a car warranty. I let it go to voicemail. No message. They called again 4 minutes later. Same unknown number. Again, I let it ring. Again, no message. The third call came an hour after that. This time, I picked up. Silence at first, the kind of silence that has texture to it, where you can hear someone breathing on the other end, very slow and controlled. And then a voice, low, calm, the kind of calm that doesn't feel relaxed. It feels deliberate, like someone choosing their words from a very specific list. He said, "You found something that belongs to me." It wasn't a question. My stomach dropped so hard I actually stood up from the couch like my body was trying to run before my brain gave the order. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat had sealed itself shut. He said, "I know where you work. I know your car. I just need you to leave the bag somewhere and we can both move on with our lives." And then he hung up. I stood in my living room holding my phone with both hands, just shaking. Not full body shaking, more like that fine internal vibration you get when your nervous system goes haywire and your muscles don't know what to do with the adrenaline. I looked at my front door. I looked at my windows. I walked to the window and looked outside at the street like he might already be out there. Nothing, just my neighbor's cat sitting on a fence post. The first thing I did was try to logic my way out of it. Maybe it was a scam, like one of those calls where someone claims you owe them money or you've won a prize. Maybe he didn't actually know anything. Maybe it was a bluff. So I did something stupid. I Googled, found money in car, what to do, which gave me a lot of conflicting opinions from strangers on Reddit. And then I closed my laptop and paced around my apartment for 20 minutes. The next morning, there was a note under my windshield wiper. I saw it from my apartment window, and I stood there for a full minute before I went outside. It was a plain white index card. No name, no address, just a number. Not a phone number, but a dollar amount. It said $46,500, which meant they knew exactly how much was in the bag, down to the last bundle, and it meant they knew I had taken $200 out. Because I had. The night before, when the panic hit, and I thought maybe I should have some emergency cash on me, I peeled off 2 bundles of hundreds and stuffed them in my jacket. $200. They knew. I went back inside. I locked the door, and I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not on a chair, on the floor, because that's what you do when the walls start closing in. And I tried to think. Whoever had left that bag, it wasn't an accident. That was clear now. The warehouse parking lot, the specific car, the exact count of the cash, this was planned. The bag was placed in my car deliberately, which meant someone had gotten into my car, which meant someone had my keys or had picked the lock, which, honestly, I probably had because I never remembered to lock it. But why my car? Why me? That question kept spinning in my head, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it because none of the answers made sense. I was nobody, a warehouse worker with a busted zipper on his coat. I barely had connections to anything interesting. I was furniture, remember? And then something shifted in my memory, something small and quiet that I had filed away without really looking at it. 2 weeks before I found the bag, there was a new guy at work. He started on the Tuesday shift. Tall, quiet, kept to himself mostly. The kind of person who you notice but never really talk to. His name was either Eric or Derek. I couldn't remember which because I only heard it once at the 5-minute staff intro the shift supervisor does when someone new starts. What I did remember was that he drove a silver Honda Civic, the exact same year and model as mine. Same color, same dented rear bumper, mine from a parking lot incident 2 years ago, his from something I never found out about.
I had laughed about it with a coworker when I first noticed it. Said something like, "Hey, I've got a twin." We had parked next to each other a few times in the lot. I never thought anything of it. Until now. My hands were shaking when I pulled on my jacket and grabbed my keys. Because if there was, then someone had put the bag in the wrong car. They weren't after me, they had made a mistake, and the person who was supposed to pick up that bag still didn't have it. I drove to the warehouse even though I had called in sick. I didn't pull into the lot. I parked on the street about a block away and walked to a spot where I could see the employee entrance and a good chunk of the parking area. It was mid-morning, between shifts, and there weren't many cars out there, but one of them was a silver Honda Civic, same dented rear bumper, parked 2 rows from where I always park. I watched it for about 5 minutes, and then I went back to my car and sat there and thought about the most terrifying thing I had realized so far, which was this. If that bag was meant for someone else, and that someone else was still showing up to work, they didn't have the money they were supposed to have. And whoever was calling me probably also knew that, which meant the situation was a lot more complicated than a stranger wanting their lost cash back. I went home. I didn't sleep. I watched my front door all night. The calls started again around midnight. 1 every hour, almost on the dot. Unknown number. I let them all ring. Around 3 in the morning, one of them left a voicemail. I pressed play and held the phone up to my ear, and the voice said, very quietly, "This is your last courtesy call." That was the whole message. I made a decision at 4 in the morning that I'm still not sure was brave or just desperate. I was going to return the money, not by calling back, not by meeting anyone face to face. I was going to put the bag back in my car, drive to the warehouse, and leave my car unlocked in the same spot where I always park. Then I was going to walk to the 24-hour diner on Crescent, sit in a booth with a cup of coffee, and wait an hour. When I came back, the bag would be gone, and I would never speak of this again. Clean, simple, no confrontation. I put the $200 back in the bag, the whole $47,200, back in the green canvas duffel, zipped up tight. I put it on the passenger seat. I drove to the warehouse at 4:30 in the morning and parked in my usual spot and left the car unlocked. Then I walked to the diner. I ordered coffee. I sat facing the window. I watched the street. My leg was bouncing so hard under the table that the salt shaker was rattling. The waitress gave me a look. I tipped her $5 I couldn't afford, apologetically. An hour passed. I paid. I walked back. My car was locked. I stood there with my key fob, confused, and then I realized I was looking at the silver Honda Civic, not mine. Someone had moved my car, or I had walked to the wrong row. I turned around, and 2 spaces down, there was my car, exactly where I left it. I was just disoriented from 3 days without real sleep and 6 hours of raw panic. I opened my car. The back seat was empty. No bag, no cash, no evidence that any of this had ever happened. Just my gym bag and a collection of water bottles I kept forgetting to throw away. The calls stopped. Every hour I expected my phone to light up again. Every time I pulled into a parking lot, I watched the cars around me. Every unknown number that came through for the next 3 weeks made my heart spike into my throat. But it was over. Nobody came. Nobody showed up at my door. No more notes under my wipers. 2 weeks later, the new guy at work was gone. Just didn't show up one day.
His ID badge was turned in, his locker emptied. The shift supervisor said he had put in a notice, but I never saw it happen. He was just there, and then he wasn't. There are whole sections of that story that are just blank, dark gaps I will never be able to fill in. What I do know is this. I had $47,200 for exactly 42 hours. I never spent a cent of it. I put it back in the bag and walked away, and probably saved myself from something I am very glad I never got to find out about. I also know that I check my back seat now before I drive anywhere. Every single time. I open that back door and I look in before I get behind the wheel. A lot of people started doing that after horror movies, checking the back seat because of something that might be hiding there. I do it because of something I found. There's a difference. And once you've lived through both, they feel about the same level of terrifying. Stay curious out there, but maybe, just maybe, if you ever find something that isn't yours, ask yourself one question before you pick it up. Who else is looking for it?